Is anxiety or worry ruining the joys in your life? Does your partner or friend ask you, why do you act that way? You say you go and do something fun, and then last minute you make some lame excuse and you don't do it. That's anxiety. It robs you of your fun and your money-making potential. Joanne Williams here with 30 years of experience helping people to extinguish worry. Watch our Anxiety Simplified videos. You're going to learn secrets, simplified ways you can use in your everyday life to take control back so you can live your potential.
Hello, Joanne Williams here for Anxiety Simplified podcast. Today we're going to be sharing about emotional support animals, or they also call them ESAs, because I wanted to share this because I found it as the simplest way to lower anxiety I've ever found as in 30 years as a therapist. The summary of today's podcast is to confront some of the misunderstandings about ESAs head on, including misinformation in the media, misinformation from the airlines, online certificate scams, and if you should get a letter, ESA letter from a therapist or a doctor. And we'll also answer one of the most frequently asked questions about ESAs. Included in this podcast, you're in the show pages, there's going to be a low-cost veterinary care resource page. Since in this global pandemic, economic issues are increasing. And I wanted to research and share some ways to find cost savings for veterinary care around our furry family friends. So please look for that if you need the help. I fell into understanding about emotional support animals certification about 7 years ago after being on a flight with my little dog, Riley. He's my ESA. We were both having anxiety with him stuffed under the seat in a carrier and him whimpering and me getting more anxious listening to him. A kind flight attendant told me about the ESA program, that if you get a letter from a licensed mental health professional, I could have him on my lap the entire time. And I had been a licensed mental health professional for 25 years at that point, and I didn't even know about these two federal laws around ESAs that have been around for almost 50 years. So I did my research and found it to be true. And for the last 7 years, I have specialized in ESA certification. And I've been certifying people what I call the right way, with the correct information to make sure that everything that is required in the two federal laws to be in the ESA letter to be accepted without reproach by airlines, property managers, and, according to the airlines and housing law, in one letter for one price. Unlike some of the other online companies that you might come across, but they charge separately for each letter. No need. But I was surprised to know that most therapists don't even know about this program. And we understand and know how the ESA process can be confusing and anxiety producing for some. That is why we wanted to empower you with resources every time we can when you get an ESA from us, so that you understand these two laws or know how to use the ESA letter, because we send the two laws in a resource page with each ESA letter. But this is the main reason I wanted to share about this information in a podcast, so you will know the laws. There is so much misinformation spread out across the USA today about ESAs. And now you will know the real truth. One thing I hear in the media all the time is that ESAs aren't trained, so they aren't true service dogs. ESAs do need to be trained to behave in public and be under their person's control and be safe, but they do not need to be trained to perform a task like a working service dog, like with a blind person, or a service dog does for medical issues. An ESA does need to provide help with a daily functioning like sleep, concentration, motivating the client maybe to get out more, exercise, or socialize easier because they have the animal at their side. In the psychological evaluation that we do, it is to see how this animal does help them with that daily functioning and find it, and to find a psychological diagnosis from our DSM diagnostic manual. To be a truly certified ESA, the ESA evaluation does need to be done by a licensed mental health professional to find those three things before a letter is issued certifying they are a certified ESA. Most of my clients I diagnose with anxiety because they are afraid to fly or go outside of their homes alone, or even to visit family or friends, or maybe be in social situations without their dog at their side. Once we determine that they meet these qualifiers, then we can write a letter certifying that they have met the two laws that govern ESAs to travel by plane, and they give this letter to their property manager to live in no pet housing without pet fees or pet rents. Just because having a vest on or a certificate that really is made to be put on the wall or registering as an ESA online does not make for a true ESA. This is one big source of misinformation about ESAs on the internet and the pop-up internet companies that are trying to say, oh, just get registered. So you will not be fooled by this misinformation now. And I want you to understand how to get a legal ESA. The two laws seem very clear to me on what is needed, I should say. A letter from a licensed mental health professional with a prescription of a recommendation that the animal helps them with a daily functioning like sleep, concentration, or socializing, and that they have a mental health disorder like anxiety, depression, etc., that the animal helps them with. When I first started my research on how to get an ESA, I visited my local doctor and asked my therapist. They had no idea what I was even talking about or how to write a letter or what needs to be in the letter. The doctor wanted to scribble something on an RX pad. The airlines need very specific information to allow an ESA to fly. So I went to the internet and I did find a psychological service who had been doing this for 25 years. I called and I spoke to a young licensed therapist who did do the evaluation with me over the phone, and they mailed me a letter. As they did the evaluation, I understood what is required to be in the letter and what is needed to be asked in the evaluation, and I knew I could do a much better job and support my clients' needs around recommendations for their anxiety or depression symptoms, or even continued sessions than this young, inexperienced therapist did for me. So I started doing ESA evaluations with a young startup company, ESA company, who had been selling mostly vests and IDs and saying that all you need to do is register to have an ESA. But they hired me as a therapist, understanding that, oh yeah, maybe that's not the case. I didn't stay with them long because that was their focus, was to sell products, vests, ID cards that are not even truly required. And it is the evaluation with a licensed mental health professional to receive that letter, not to buy a vest. I began to see the misinformation that was being put out over the internet sphere to sell products, vests, ID are just getting registered over providing the true mental health services or speaking to a licensed mental health professional and having a true evaluation to have the therapist certify that the person has a psychological diagnosis like panic or social anxiety or specific phobia, maybe around flying or driving, post-traumatic stress disorder from war, or traumatic experiences that significantly affect their life and that their animal helps them with. The most frequently asked questions on the internet or on Facebook when a person calls us is, how do I qualify for an emotional support animal before I pay money? What if I don't qualify? So I'm going to tell you right now, there are 3 things that the law requires. Number 1, that you have an animal. Any animal can be the animal if they help you. Number 2, helps you with the daily functioning, like sleep, concentration, or motivating you to get out more, maybe to exercise or socialize easier. And 3rd, that they have a psychological diagnosis that we find in the evaluation, like anxiety, depression, etc. The 2 laws that govern ESAs are the Fair Housing Act, enacted in 1968, and then a later version called the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, in 1990. Both of these laws include having your animal in housing without being discriminated against. They called them a service animal at that point before the ADA came along. Then they separated out the service animals for medical needs like blindness, seizures, and they put that under the ADA law, where an emotional support animal, which is for calming anxiety or helping with depression, they kept that under the Fair Housing law. In 1986, there was a new law, the Air Carriers Access Act for airlines, to allow service and emotional support animals to fly without discrimination. They can't charge fees or restrict weight or breeds of animals, except they can say no to reptiles, spiders, or exotic animals of any kind, and they never were allowed to bring those on board. But the information continued around airlines in the last couple of years, and I know you've seen it, as people just have discovered this law to fly with ESAs along with the airlines, making more people pay for pets. More people were bringing ESAs on the plane. So the airlines began to make statements like that in the media. Oh, those people are abusing the law, where the airlines themselves were not even doing their job, not asking for the required ESA letter at check-in or checking for safety before boarding, which is their responsibility and required in the law. They took pictures of the peacocks strutting through the airport, and they said no to that. But you never heard that, did you, in the media? No, they let those people let a peacock on. How about the turkey sitting in a seat, or the cute little pig with the tutu on the plane? And again, they talked about those people were bringing these animals on the plane. If you notice the picture with the turkey, you probably don't remember now. It was a year or so ago. There was nobody else on the plane. I think they trotted that little turkey on and then took pictures and got him off. All the time, airlines, right in the law, it states they have the right to refuse any exotic animals. But instead, they perpetuated this misconception that those people were abusing the law. The Department of Transportation, or DOT, who monitors the law, was not seeing this abuse, just an increase in people using the law to bring their ESAs. The airlines instituted forms a couple of years ago to be completed before bringing your emotional support animal ESA on the plane that really put up obstacles, I believe. So in August 2019, the DOT clarified that what the airlines could or could not do, I call it put boundaries around them, to rein in the airlines trying to curb people from bringing their ESAs on the plane, especially when after a little puppy died because a flight attendant forced a mother holding a baby who didn't speak English and had a teenager to put a new puppy in an overhead bin. And the puppy died. So that's what they put in the clarification airline regulation. You can't put a puppy in the overhead bin. I even had an experience flying on an airline before COVID, and I have a carrier that I bring Riley in, who's here right now. He just sits on my lap. He's just here with me, and I was just have a little rolling bag, little rolling backpack that I had, and I was putting the backpack in the overhead bin. He was on my lap, or he was down, waiting for me to sit down, and they go, oh, no, 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 you can't put that up in the overhead bin, which I had always done. I'm like, oh, okay, why not? Because of the perception. And I'm like, what? Say that again? The perception? The perception that there is a dog in it. So this airlines, which is a very good airlines, has really started to take this to heart. So, but I'll tell you, some other ones have not so much. Even after this clarification in August 2019 of the ESA laws, still to this day, 3 airlines, United, JetBlue, and Alaska, still require a mental health form to be completed by a licensed mental health professional. Even with the clarification which states that the DOT would consider it a violation of the airlines if they required a passenger who had an ESA letter from a therapist to have that therapist complete the airline's form or their form. Some airlines don't seem to care about following the law like we are expected to get a certified ESA. So we do assist clients with completion of the airlines form if asked, even if not required in the law. Remembering, like I said, that most of my clients have anxiety, and most of them like, okay, would you just fill out the form? They just don't want to hassle. They are afraid, and I'm afraid some of the airlines are taking advantage of that with these requirements or not having trained personnel. And it comes back down to the clients who are presumed to have an emotional disability because their anxiety or depression or whatever affects the daily functioning, which does classify them to have an emotional disability. And I believe they are being discriminated still. And what are we to do? You want to get on that plane. Animals help us in so many ways. Researchers say that people who own dogs have a 24% lower risk of death than people who don't. And this is in the general population, not the most vulnerable population with traumas, family history of mental illness, or having mental illness like anxiety or depression that does affect their life. They don't have to be homeless or down or in the streets or passing out from anxiety to have a mental illness. This could be your neighbor or the angry friend in traffic. But now with this pandemic, anxiety is skyrocketing. And now we need to use our animals more than ever to help us cope. Anxiety and depression, according to some research recently, has increased to 33 to 50% of our U.S. population. That's incredible. So what if, though, an animal or an ESA in your life could calm the frayed nerves of an increasing stress population, or it even could save a life? There's 3 things you can do today to help. Be more thoughtful or less judgmental of maybe somebody with an animal on a plane. You know what you're thinking. Because it's not visible. This disability is not shown on the outside. It's on the inside. And I'm telling you, we are working so hard to make it not seen, because that would draw attention to us, increase the anxiety. So please be thoughtful. Suggest to a veterans group or a police department in our comment section that maybe they're interested in hearing more about how an animal in their precinct might help the overall calmness in the environment, or a trial program, or having officers get certified ESAs. We will contact them and send them a video on how we can help. Smile at a person today. I'm smiling through the microphone, and think a nice thought towards that person. I'm making a pause to smile at you. One story goes that a man was going to jump off a bridge. If as he walked to the bridge, no one looked him in the eyes and smiled at him as he walked to the bridge. No one did. And this is what the suicide note stated. We all can make a difference in each other's lives with a smile. What if this man saw you walking your dog, and I bet he would have stopped and petted it. You would have smiled at him. You could have saved a life. Maybe your own, maybe a friend or a family friend, or even a member of your family, just by having a dog or an animal that you can walk. If you want more information on how to get a certified emotional support animal, you can visit our sister website, ESApros.com. The ESA like emotional support animal, but just ESApros, PROS.com. Or on our podcast website, anxietysimplified.net for more information. Get a dog, save a life.
Thank you for watching. Now practice to experience what you've learned today. We know that anxiety is real, but the struggle is optional. Experiencing these skills makes the struggle of anxiety go away when you can feel in charge of your life again. Call us for a 10-minute free consultation at 760-485-6784, or to hear more about how to get a certified emotional support animal. Please like and subscribe and share this video as your way to help a friend.